Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. So happy to have each and every one of you back here today. Also super excited to have our guest today. She's got a fascinating story and she's doing something really cool. So I look forward to introducing her. We've got Amanda Black. She is the founder and owner of the Solo Female Traveler Network. Amanda, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks so much, Jason. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I usually start with, okay, what is your business? Give us the 30 to 60 second elevator pitch. The name says a lot. I mean, which is pretty cool. It's not always the case. The name says a lot, but I want to go a little deeper. We're going to go into your story, figure out how you got from where you were to where you are now. But before we do that, let's really give our listeners kind of an idea of what is the Solo Female Traveler Network, the part that's not obvious, so they can just kind of get a feel for what that's all about before we get into your story.
The Solo Female Traveler Network is all about community. It's about connecting women all around the world who identify or want to become a solo female traveler. I started this community about 10 years ago, and about 8 years ago, we started offering organized tours. So now we offer about 30 tours around the world every year to different destinations, mostly destinations that are perceived as less safe or less logistically possible for women to travel on their own. So we are both community and tours.
So the first thing that pops to my mind is community. That word community we don't always think of solo and community being in the same sentence. So I'd love to dig a little deeper into that, because you mentioned group tours, you mentioned community, but then you also mentioned solo. So is this for women that really want to travel solo or be part of a community?
It's for both. This is a really, really common question that we're asked. You can be a solo traveler and also want to be part of a community. You can be both. And there are lots of different types of solo travel. You can go completely by yourself and you can do something crazy adventurous and go out into the wilderness of this, really remote, off the beaten path country and do everything by yourself. You can also go on your own to a country, join day tours, and stay in hostels. That's another kind of solo travel. You can also join a group of fellow solo female travelers and be taken on an incredible adventure where you don't have to worry as much about your safety and about logistics and about planning and doing and seeing all of the most awesome things in that country. So, yes, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, we are a community for you before your travels, during your travels, after you travel, to ask questions, to maximize your experience, to understand. This is probably the most important. Understand local customs in certain countries that may not be obvious, maybe different customs, different ways that you should dress to respect the culture, to be safe. So and then also when you are traveling, when you're by yourself, things can happen. You are a little bit more vulnerable when you're totally solo. And so the community helps you solve those problems.
So what I hear you saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I hear you saying is that whether you're I don't know, I don't think you said true solo, but if I say true solo, like I'm going someplace by myself, in a sense, completely unassisted. Maybe they're booking their own flights, they're booking their hostels, they're doing everything on their own, all the way to maybe the solo traveler that travels as part of a group of your other clients.
So it sounds like you're able to support and help and provide a community for everybody in that spectrum. Is that right?
Totally
So
correct.
that is what you said. Okay. All right. So it's not necessary. So even if you're not booking anything for them, there's a community. They can come in and get ideas and learn about customs and stuff like this, whether they're paying you to put together their trip or not, right?
Totally. Yep.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Do you find that women start out more in the go as part of a group or go as a solo? Is there a natural progression, or is that a hard one to pin down?
That one's harder to pin down because you have some people like me. My first solo trip was a one-way ticket to Honduras, which is probably not really the most typical journey that someone takes. A lot of the advice that I usually give to somebody starting solo travel is to do maybe weekend trips closer to home, do a road trip by yourself, go to a country that is perceived as safe for solo female travelers as your first adventure. So a lot of women do that. And a lot of people assume that a trip like ours, these group trips for solo female travelers, that this is a way to start. And it is a way to start because you do kind of can get your feet wet and start to build these skills necessary for traveling solo. But also, especially for me, I've been traveling solo for a long time and I still go on big trips all by myself. But as you do that for many years, it doesn't get old, but your lives, my life has changed. So sometimes I want to go on a trip with women who I know I'm going to love spending time with. I know that I'm going to have the best time with them. We're going to laugh a lot and we're going to become really close. And sometimes I want that instead of doing the thing all by myself.
It makes sense because I can see where someone might initially think, oh, I need to start with a group so I can get my feet wet, learn some things and get more comfortable. And then I can become a quote unquote true solo traveler. But that depends on your goal. If that's your goal, I guess. But there's a lot of value to going on a group trip with, I've never been on an all women's group trip. I'll probably never get invited, I'm sure. But I've worked in tourism for a while, and I've led group trips where we've got a group of guys and their spouses, and we sometimes do different activities. It's been fun. I've learned a lot. But the point being that, maybe someone's done a lot of solo travel, like you mentioned, and there's value and benefit to going with the group, much more than just having somebody to organize everything or having a schedule or having an agenda or safety in numbers or anything like that. It's just pure human connection, which
Totally.
has to be huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And a lot of times people kind of assume that we are either all brand new solo travelers or we are all single. Neither of those things are true. In fact, a lot of our travelers are really experienced solo female travelers. I mean, like they've done all the things on their own and they come with us because they finally don't have to plan it all and figure it out all on their own. They trust us with the coolest accommodation and new local friends and experiences that they would have a hard time finding. And most importantly, it's doing all this cool stuff with women who really get you. There's nobody on this tour telling you, oh, that sounds weird, maybe you should come home now. Or telling you like, oh, I don't know if you should go into somebody's home for dinner. You've never met them. We've met them, but like it's kind of just being able to be your true self that way with people who get you. And I've experienced the best connections and best friendships from this. I've witnessed the best friendships come from this. And that is my favorite part about these tours, which is not what I intended in the beginning, but that is definitely what it's become.
We're definitely going to get to in the beginning. And before we go there, I mean, honestly, as I'm listening to you, and I've had this thought many times over the years, both working in tourism, but also the last 4.5 years or so, I've been traveling solo by myself and kind of I actually am living the nomad lifestyle. So everything I own is in my suitcase and I'm completely dependent on wherever I end up to meet people, to make connections and to just kind of, get my needs for social interaction. And many times I've thought, you know what, I would love to go on a group trip. But as a guy, there's something different. And I want to touch on this because honestly, I kind of think like all women's or the ladies or the female group trips or whatever, I think they're pretty cool compared to guys trips. First of all, we don't see a lot of companies out there offering guys trips. They might offer them as something different. You know, they don't brand it necessarily as a guys trip. It might be any number of stereotypes or whatever that we could use. But like, honestly, I probably would not really want to join a guys group trip. You know, I would much rather go join a women's group trip, but I can't. So that's fine, whatever. And then there's also just mixed trips. I get that. I'd probably be more inclined to maybe do that. But even on those, sometimes you get a lot of couples and it's more of a dating theme, which is not necessarily what I'm looking for. It's probably not what some of the single women that are going on your trips are looking for. What do you think? I don't even know if we want to touch on this, but have you worked with guys in the past? Do you have enough insight on why women's trips are so much more fun than guys' trips? In my mind, anyway.
I have a lot of opinions on this.
All right, great. Let's go.
So yes, I have. So we also do like group trip, like private group trips, and we don't care what your gender is if we're planning your private trip. So we've done bachelor parties before, and we've done like just guy friend trips before, and that's a little different because those guys all know each other. They've been friends forever. But I think, I understand that this trend is starting to happen where there's a loneliness epidemic, they call it, for a male loneliness epidemic. Some people call it a male accountability epidemic. And I think that with women, we are so programmed and used to and thrive on connecting with each other. Most of us do it easily and naturally, especially when we're in the right container for it. And we don't need an excuse. Like, we don't need a cover story for us coming together and connecting. We just do. So I think men are a little different that way. And I'm no like anthropologist or societal whatever expert, but in my opinion, I think men have not been taught and have not generally been given the permission to talk about their feelings with each other, to come together without a reason and a purpose, like a specific reason and purpose other than connection. And so I think that those two things are something that make women connect really fast, and men don't naturally have that. So I know that there's a lot of people trying to do male only retreats and men only, like, experiences and trips and stuff. Most of them kind of lean into that purpose. It might be like a lot of them are kind of aggressive, but some of them aren't. And
what do you mean by that? I'm going to push
like,
a little bit further. I'm going to be aggressive on that. Let's go a little deeper.
I mean, they exist. I'll have to find you some names. I'm not that, but I've seen a lot and talked to some founders of these things where it's like about men expressing themselves, but like some men have so much anger and they just don't know how to express themselves other ways. So it's a lot of like really tough stuff, like boot camp style shit and like yelling in each other's faces. And, that's not connection. That's something else.
Well,
anyway,
it's an interesting thing because you can say that's not connection, but I think, as a former veteran of the Army, it's weird. It's strange. Guys, we just are weird because we will stand around in a circle and just give each other hell and just call each other names and mess with each other. And if you're the one in the circle that nobody's messing with, you feel disconnected. Well, they don't like me. They're not picking on me. But to women, that sounds totally weird. And I feel like women are more likely to book a trip where there's on the itinerary, there's like, we're going to get together. And I don't know if you have a word for it, but just kind of connect. I don't know. Connection time. Would you put on your itinerary connection time? But if you put connection time on an itinerary for a men's group, it's going to be like, I'm not going on that.
That's the thing though. We don't need connection time. We just connect.
Yeah. Like, it just happens.
But there are some really amazing men who are creating spaces and experiences that are genuine and lower key and really do give men that space to just not necessarily like trauma bond, but just be in each other's space for no other reason than to have fun and
Mm-hmm.
make friends. So I hope that does become more mainstream. I would love for the whole world, no matter what your gender, to experience the things that women experience on these tours.
I think so too. I think there's some societal, we've kind of created some stories around how men and women interact with each other. And I imagine a lot of your guests or a lot of the members of your community, but also your guests on your group trips are, part of a couple. They're in a relationship. They're not necessarily single. And then I imagine guys saying to their wives or their partners, hey, I want to go on this guys only trip. We're going to Costa Rica. And
Yeah.
there's going to get probably a little bit more pushback. But I don't know, maybe the women in your group, do they get pushback from their partners? Is that common? Do you guys talk about that?
I mean, we definitely talk about how partners feel about them coming on tours like this, but I cannot think of an instance where a partner has given pushback because it's been all women. The only pushback is, well, no, I have to take care of the kids for a week. Like,
Oh, wow.
but otherwise,
Interesting. Well, we should change the subject a little bit before either one of us get accused of anything.
or someone gets in trouble. Yeah.
But you mentioned a word a few times or a phrase a few times when we started this conversation. You talked about countries or locations that are perceived as safe. I caught the word perceived. You didn't say go to safe countries if you're starting out. You didn't say anything. You said perceived, and you used the word perceived a few times. So I'm curious, based on your experience traveling and your experience spending time with women that maybe are on their first trip outside the country, why are you using the word perceived? I think there's something beneath that. Let's discuss it.
I use the word perceived because even in a quote unquote safe country, things can happen. And when you go, if I use the word unsafe to describe a country, that's also not really fair because there are unsafe. A lot of times people use the term unsafe to describe a country when it's really not actually unsafe. It's just culturally very uncomfortable for them. And that's a totally different thing. So I use the term perceived because it's more fair. That's all.
Okay. All right. That's cool. And I suspected, or the connection I was making is sometimes we have opinions, ideas about places, which you touched on, that when we get there, we realize, wow, my perception was quite a bit different than the reality that I'm experiencing here. And I know you've had that experience, and that may even come up when we get to the point of discussing your first solo trip to Honduras. But there's that perception is a big thing when it comes to travel and deciding where to go. And I don't know, I caught the word perceived, and I thought that was pretty interesting, because you're right. Every community, every country, every place has things that look very unsafe, but it's just uncomfortable. It might be graffiti on the walls. If you're not used to that and you go someplace and there's a lot of graffiti or there's barred windows over the shops that they close at night, that might just, holy cow, this place is unsafe. And that word it doesn't necessarily have any accurate reflection on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be the safest neighborhood in Quito, but there's graffiti on the walls and you think it's unsafe, but the locals are like, no, this place is great. This is one of the best neighborhoods in town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of that.
And a lot of times a country can have, get a bad rap for a very specific area in the whole country. It's just this one spot that has some kind of high crime or terrorism or whatever. But a lot of times people don't, until they travel a little bit more, they don't necessarily understand that while the travel advisory for that country may be high, it's actually just that one spot, and the rest of the country is very well traveled and very, I'm using air quotes again, safe. And so it's a shame to throw away a whole country because of this one very small geographical area. So yeah.
Absolutely. I've spent quite a bit of time in the last several years in Colombia. And I remember when I started traveling full time, that was the first place I started, because I'd had people in my life in the past who, you can't go there. That's not safe. That's not a safe place to go. There's no way my husband is going there. So then at some point, she didn't really care where I went. So that's where I went. And And immediately I was like, wow, there are so many people that will miss out on this type of opportunity because of these ideas, because of things they've seen in the past on the news. The news does a really horrible job of coming back later on and saying, look where they are now. Look how much this has changed and what has happened in the last 20 or 30 years. They just tend to ignore anything that's positive and focus on the negative. So that was one example for me. It was just sitting there drinking coffee and eating croissants on the street thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many people back in the US that would never have this experience because of the stories and those ideas. So, but at the same time, things, you have to be smart, but that's the same thing here in the US. I'm not sure, where do you live?
I live in San Diego.
Okay. So yeah, so San Diego's a great place. And if you want to find trouble in San Diego, I'm sure you know right where to go to find it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's get into the history, because I think what you're doing is super, super cool. I want to figure out how the heck you got into it. So how far back do we need to go, Amanda, to kind of get a feel for what prompted all this stuff and ended up here?
I'd say, so we've had the community about 10 years. And before I started this community, I was traveling solo. I was doing it in a very low key way because my mom was a big worrier and she was very scared anywhere I went and anything I did. I love my mom, and I wanted to keep her from having, some kind of stroke from all the worry. So
Yeah,
I
that's nice of you.
Thanks. So I was traveling, but at one point my mom got very sick. And when she did get sick, I quit my job and I left the country that I was living in to come be with her. And a few months later, she died. And so I was lost. And I realized, though, I had nothing to lose anymore. I had no job, home really anymore. My mom was gone. So I bought my one-way ticket to do whatever the heck I wanted. And so what I wanted was to go to Honduras and get my dive master certification. So that was my one-way ticket. And I ended up backpacking through all of Central America, going to Cuba and India and Mexico. But along the way, I got, a few things happen. Sometimes things happen. Like you are living by yourself. I was broke, things happen. But I got robbed in Mexico, and that was sort of my last straw. Like, I knew in a place like Cancun, I had just arrived, and I knew that there in Cancun, there had to be plenty of amazing women, specifically women in that case, because I was actually surrounded. It's a long story, doesn't matter, but I was surrounded by men, some of whom were not very good characters. And I just needed a woman. I needed like a BFF. I needed like bestie vibes or like mom vibes. I needed someone to help me get through this. And I knew that existed, but I didn't have a way to connect with them. So as soon as I replaced my computer, I started a Facebook group back when Facebook was really cool. And I grew that. And after a couple years, maybe a year and a half or so, I had at the time about 65,000 members, and we were a really good community, and we still are, but they were saying that they wanted to travel together. So at that moment, I was living in Australia, super broke, working under minimum wage, under the table jobs, like just trying to get by. So I was like, okay, I have some space on my credit card. Let me try to put this trip together. So it was to Bali. It was a 1 week trip to Bali for $1,000. And I got 17 women to sign up for that trip. I actually accidentally oversold it because I didn't know what I was doing and I had to get a second villa, but it worked out. It was super fun. It was so good, actually, that 9 of those women got our community symbol or our logo tattooed on that trip because the
Wow.
vibe was like so strong. It was really fun. And that was the first one. And so now 8 years later, we do this in a bunch of countries and about 30 departures a year at this point. So yeah, that's the
That's so
story.
cool. I'd like to push you a little further back in time, because I think there were probably a few things going on before you said you're traveling kind of under the radar before, and your mom was sick and all that stuff. But what was going on when you were like younger? Did you imagine when you were like 12 that you wanted to go travel, or were you reading National Geographics? What was going on? Because I've heard a bunch of different stories and I want to kind of dig into yours.
When I was a kid, my grandparents bought me a subscription to National Geographic,
How
actually.
did I know? It's a common theme. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's a common theme in this industry.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe that planted a very early seed. And I do remember though being very young, and I mean, maybe I was 8, maybe I was 12, definitely not a teenager yet, but I remember thinking to myself, I know I'm going to live in a different country one day and speak a different language. I know it. And I would go to my parents, and I love my parents. They are the sweetest, best people. They're also not the most like, they've both traveled, but they're not like travelers, right? Like
Right,
they're not
right.
like, one time they bought a big screen TV instead of our yearly family vacation. Not over it. But
Yeah.
that's, you know what I mean? Like that's how they go.
That's means for divorce right there. I'm done with you guys.
I was so mad. I'm
I
still
bet.
mad.
I can relate to that.
So that's kind of who they were. So I would tell them these dreams of mine, and they would tell me, they would say, Mandy, what they call me, they'd say,
Mm-hmm.
Mandy, one day when you are retired, you can go to Europe for 10 days like the rest of us. And I was like, no, I need it sooner. And they said, okay, maybe when you graduate college. They didn't, I got a computer, which is very generous. But anyway, didn't go to Europe. So yeah, wasn't exposed to this, but what I was exposed to is moving a lot. We moved every couple years when I was growing up. So big change I was very accustomed to big change. So when it came time to, finally start traveling on my own, move countries, start a business, a little different, but those big changes, I was already very wired to handle those.
It seems like, I mean, if you look at people that have not traveled, have no desire to travel, or they just aren't afflicted with this travel thing that you and I are afflicted with. Oftentimes, a lot of it's like, no, I've lived here my whole life. I know all my friends here. This is the same house I've owned forever. There maybe even work. Maybe it's changed now, but maybe they're even working at the same place that their parents worked at or whatever. And it's just those patterns are kind of set early on in life. It's like, am I somebody that's open to change and getting uncomfortable? Or do I value basically consistency and stability? Is really what it comes down to. I think I'm kind of like you. And I'm curious though, well, I'm just going to ask you, I'm curious, was there a particular reason you guys were moving? Was there something else kind of tied to that, or is it just part of the way it worked out?
A lot of people think that my dad was in the military or something. He wasn't. He just had a job that was kind of new. It was like a new industry, and he was also, I had boomer parents, and boomers are go with the job. So when the job said go, we went. When the job we went, if he got laid off once when I was young, and he didn't put his resume out in our city, he put it out into the country. And so whoever gave him the best offer, that's where we went. So yeah.
Okay. So on some level, it sounds like he and maybe your mom were open to some level of change, but also tied to a job. So there's the consistency comes from the having a job. Having a job is a good thing, I guess I've heard.
Yeah.
And some people value it a lot more than others. But it sounds like he was willing to pick up and change houses and change scenery. Do you remember a particular place that you guys lived when you were young that maybe had any influence? Did you run into anybody from other countries? Or, I mean, do you remember why you decided you wanted to go live in some other country and speak a different language?
No, I don't know why. I just knew. When I was everywhere we lived, my parents, we lived in suburbs, and we lived in very middle class suburbs. So there wasn't usually a whole lot of diversity, to be honest. I mean, I was certainly exposed. My dad is actually in his soul, a very adventurous person, very curious, very interested in a lot of things. He's well read. If he had lived a different life, or maybe was born in a different decade, I think he would be a a traveler beyond either of us.
Wow.
He has no like safety instinct.
But it sounds like, based on the way you described your mom, or in a little bit about you traveling, I'm guessing that she grounded him a little bit.
They were a good balance. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, like I feel like I was kind of exposed to like saying yes and being curious, and I get a lot of that from my dad. And my mom was a very emotionally intelligent, very kind, open, warm person. And so yeah, I guess curiosity on both sides.
So that's super, super cool. What were you like interested in high school? What were you studying? What did you think you were going to be doing with your life?
When I was in high school, I was into all of the things. I was doing drama. I was in the choir. I was on the newspaper for a minute. I was the president of everything I could be the president of. I was skipping class all the time, but not like a bad kid. I would say, oh, I have to go to the principal's office because I have to discuss this event that we have coming up. I was that kind of, I was like a good bad kid.
A
I
good
was
bad
really,
kid.
yeah.
Have you heard of ADD, ADHD? I'm just curious.
I have heard of it. I don't accept that.
Good for you. I was speaking with somebody recently. They taught me a new word called multi-potentialite. And I was
Okay.
like, what the hell's that? Multi-potentialite. Oh, you have potential in all these different areas and you really don't want to focus on one. And you're just super curious and interested in everything. And you've got these multi-potentialities or something. And I asked her, I said, that sounds like a much nicer way of saying ADHD. She's like, well, whatever. Use the word however you want. But I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me here, Amanda. So anyway, so what did you end up majoring in? Or what did you do after high school? I shouldn't say major in, but what was the direction you went initially out of high school?
I studied music when I was started taking voice lessons when I was young, and my major in college was vocal performance.
Do
But
you know what? So
huh,
was mine.
was it really
So maybe there's ADHD.
so weird?
I was the theater guy, the drama music guy. I went to school, music and theater scholarship. So I think we've got some
Gosh, that's
similarities.
so funny.
All right. So how long did you stick with that, and how did that go?
Well, like I said, in high school, I was very scattered and into all the things. It didn't exactly just change when I was in college. So in college, I got really into not going to class. So
You sound so much like me. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I loved the singing part, but
Mm-hmm.
music theory was a drag.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, like I didn't do great. Like I got a lot of good grades, but then, if a class had a attendance requirement or you failed, then I failed. And my parents, I'm the first child, so they were very on top. They paid for my college too, so they were very
Mm-hmm.
on top of me, and they were like, "Hell no, you're coming back home and you're going to a different school because we're not paying for you to go."
Fail out of music school.
Yeah. Which is, maybe I think a little bit harsh, but like fair. I didn't fail everything.
Well, problem can be for some people. It's like, even if you go to your parents and say, I'm going to go study vocal music or theater, and even if you do really well and you graduate, they're still probably not going to be that excited. So once you start to struggle, then it just is like a double whammy. We're
No,
not going to pay for you to do that.
that's a really fair point. They were not thrilled about my choice in the first place.
If you were struggling, if you were in a chemistry program learning, some, I don't know, some sort of chemistry or science or math, and you were struggling, they would have just encouraged you, just keep going. You got this. Don't give up.
Jason, have you met my brother? Because he majored in chemistry and he struggled and they left him in there.
Yeah.
So mad.
This all sounds very familiar. I think I think we've been living a parallel lives here. Yeah. My brother, the computer technician, the computer
Yeah.
like expert, he's really good, and I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going to go next. Anyway. All right. So you came back to go to a different school. And
Yeah.
what did you do then?
I lived with my parents for a bit and I went to University of Cincinnati, and I had to pick a different major, and I folded under the pressure and I chose legal studies.
Okay.
So I ended up graduating with a degree in legal studies, which is useless unless you want to be a paralegal. So I didn't know myself very well and thought that I would make a great lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a paralegal, went to law school, hated it, left law school after I completed my first year and left. And then ultimately, I did go back to grad school twice and never finished. So I've spent more time in grad school than most, but I don't have a degree. But ultimately, I did study for 1 year. I did a master's program in entrepreneurship, which was useless for entrepreneurship, to be quite honest, but it was fun. Yeah,
It's very cool. Along the way, did you ever hear about this thing called Myers-Briggs personality assessment?
definitely.
Are you an ENFP?
Yes.
Yes, I knew you were.
That's weird.
There, I yeah. Anyway, yeah, I can tell because so am I. It's like, yeah, okay.
No one has ever actually guessed that right. That's crazy.
It's the one that I get. It's like I can tell there's another ENFP. I'm like, oh, you're ENFP, aren't you? And I've pretty much decided that like statistically they're not that large of a group of people. But if you look at people that work in in tourism, the type of thing you do, it's like, yeah, it's actually a really good fit.
That's
Because we're kind of the
interesting.
come on, let's go, the promoter or whatever. Let's make things happen. So anyway, I just got a hunch. So
That's
all right. So where does that take us? You going to grad school a few times, doing that type of thing, which relates. When did you mention that when your mom got sick, actually, you were living overseas? So
Mhm.
take us to that point. Where were you working? What were you doing?
I was living in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Living in Israel. I had gone there to do a volunteer program, and I volunteered for 9 months in an area that was it was obviously Jewish people, also Palestinian people. It was in the very, very north part of Israel, so it was had a lot of Druze population as well. And so I volunteered teaching English to all of these communities. I also volunteered at a rape crisis center that also served all of these communities.
Mm-hmm.
And our program was very focused on understanding the conflict. So that's what I did for 9 months. And I really loved what I had been doing there. So I decided to continue doing it. And the only way I could do that was to move there. So that's what I did. And so I lived in that area for a while, and I got a job in marketing and voluntourism to bring more people to do what I did. And that's kind of where I was. And then my mom got sick, and I left everything like within a week.
That was your first foray outside the country. I was curious, were there moments on that trip that you're like, oh, yeah, this traveling outside the US thing is definitely, because you'd mentioned earlier you wanted to live in another country when you were younger
Mm-hmm.
and speak another language. So was it like, oh, yep, this is the thing. This is what I really want to be doing at some point? And I understand why you'd go back home. I get that. Your mom was sick, but did you kind of already
Yeah.
know that, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I wanted to do a big, like, multi-country, backpacky, like, exploration. I knew I was going to, but at the time, it wasn't the right time, not only because of my mom, but it just wasn't the right time. I hate to use the word broke again, but that is part of it. And I needed some stability for a second. I needed some jobs, some momentum. So that was a good place for me at the time to gain some of that. And then when my mom did die, I got a very small amount of money, but it was enough to get going. And so that's when I went off.
To Honduras. Had you been scuba diving before that, or did you just know I'm going to go be a scuba? Was it scuba dive master or scuba instructor or what?
Yeah, I had my open water
Okay.
certification. So yeah, I had done that. And yeah, I just was like, why not?
All right. Did you then take that into the point of making money as a dive master, or was
That was the plan, but no.
I know it was the plan. You and I are alike.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
I'm yeah. I managed a dive resort in Belize for a while. I know a little bit about
Cool.
that stuff. But yeah. but for a while until I, got bored and decided I wanted to go do something else. So, all right, very, very cool. And did you speak Spanish when you went to Honduras? Did you already know some Spanish or?
Yeah, like I took Spanish all through high school and college. So yeah, when I was I went through almost all, only Panama. I just haven't been to Panama, but otherwise I went through all of Central America and got to practice my high school and college Spanish. And so yeah, I do okay.
Very, very cool. Okay, so you traveled around a bit, and I want to make sure we don't miss any of the big things. Is there anything between that and when you were in Australia and you decided to take this group of ladies to Bali?
I mean, yeah, tons of things happened between that
I'm
time.
sure.
um,
Tell
but
us a
no, it's
few.
like lots of travel
It
happened.
starts with I was broke. There was this one time when I was on a bus and I was broke.
Yeah.
Oh, that was my story. Go ahead. So how did you end up in Australia?
I had heard about the work holiday visa and I applied for it and but I was busy, so I got it and I had time to go. But I was, the cutoff is 30 years old and I was about to turn 30 or 31, whatever the cutoff is. So I was like, well, I better go now. So I'm just going to go over there real quick and then come back. But I ended up going there, struggling really hard, but liking it. And then I went to grad school, so I got on a student visa, and then I met a boy and I got on a partner visa, and then we broke up and I got kicked out of the country. So
All right.
that was my stint in Australia.
But while you were there, you'd been building your community of solo female travelers and took your first group to Bali. Was it an immediate like, oh yeah, this is how I'm gonna maybe solve some of my broke problems and still travel?
No.
No? Okay.
I had definitely, I'm not gonna lie, I did have dreams. I remember telling a fellow traveler when I was in Cuba, like, because you know how you bond with travelers
Mhm.
so fast, and I remember pouring my soul out about, oh my god, wouldn't it be amazing if we had this community and women could know what was safe and what was good and what was fun, and I had all these dreams. But I didn't expect to run group tours. But it was that my group said they wanted to meet each other in person. They wanted to travel together. And so I put this trip together and it was genuinely, I can say this now because we've had hundreds of successful tours since, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my career to this day. It was, I had no idea what I was doing. And worst of all, I thought that I did. I thought that you could have a little bit of experience in the travel industry and be a well traveled person and be able to pull this off. And that's not true. It was really hard. And a lot of things went really wrong behind the scenes. And it was pure luck and a lot of willpower that this trip was as successful as it was. So when I was going through this, I was like, what the heck am I doing? And I will never do this again. But then when it
Okay.
was over, and on the last
Yeah.
day they got the tattoos and they told me what a great time they had and how many friends were made, then I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this again.
I don't know if it's for everybody, but I know it's for me, and I suspect maybe it sounds like it was for you, but that was the drug for me in this adventure tourism space. I had a balloon ride business for a while, and I was a fly fishing guide, and I ran a lot of group trips for a company. And frankly, I was always kind of uptight before, like worried about, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Who the hell am I to be thinking I can be charging this kind of money for people to spend time with me to do this, that. But then as soon as it was over, pretty much every time I was like, I'd get this rush. And the hugs, when the hugs came, because usually at the end of a group trip or a really good day out with clients, you're guiding them doing something, there's that hug. Like, oh my gosh, this was so cool. Wow, I can't, we got to do this again. Where are we going next, Jason? That's when the dopamine and all the stuff hit me. And I'd be like, yep, I'm going to keep doing this. One day before, when I was still in the middle of it, I'm like, I need to find a different job. This is stressful. Oh my gosh, all these people are dependent on me. And what am I doing? Da, 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 da. It sounds like you got that same thing. Do you still get that?
Yeah, it's funny, it has changed quite a bit because I'm not the guide, right? I learned I'm a horrible guide. I don't have the patience as the good guides, like sounds like you, that you guys have. And also I own the business. There's a lot of things, other things going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am not a guide.
But
So
you go, are you still leading the group trips?
I go on like maybe 4 trips per year and we
Okay.
offer like 30. So
Okay. So you get
no, I
that, you
don't.
probably get that 4 times a year. You probably feel pretty good about being there,
And I
don't you?
get it in a very different way.
Yeah.
Once in a while, yeah, like I mean my repeat travelers know how much I put into it, and I get the hugs and the love and the friendship and all of that. Sometimes I mostly just sometimes it's not quite, they don't really understand why I'm there sometimes because I'm not the guide and I'm not the driver. And why is the owner here? And,
Mm.
that's a worst case scenario for sure. That doesn't happen very often, but sometimes that's how it goes. But when I get, when somebody feels so inspired and fulfilled on a trip that sometimes women cry, like, and expressing how moved they've been, that is my favorite.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
just
get it. Yeah.
that's gratitude to me. Sometimes they'll give me like little gifts. Maybe, one girl once got me a necklace from South Africa, and another one recently wrote me a beautiful card. Those little things are really, really meaningful. So it's really when they connect with each other and they have fulfilled some dream of their own. Yeah, that's when I'm like, okay.
That's
It's
why I'm doing this. All right. That's super cool. I'm curious, have you ever gone on one of your, I don't even know if you could do this because you've got a huge community. You're pretty high profile in your community. People probably kind of know who you are, obviously. I was just curious if you ever tried, have you ever thought about like, could you go on one of these trips kind of incognito, kind of like, what's that show where the EO would disguise himself on going
undercover
and
boss.
yeah, undercover boss. Do you think you could, first, I guess, do you think you could do that? Have you ever tried to do that? Or what do you think it would be like to be on one of your trips as just one of the girls?
So I did try to do that once a long time ago. I felt really guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was recognized though because of my hair. It was like hour two, and she's like, "I think I recognize that hair. Didn't I see that on the website?" And I was like, "Okay, fine."
You got me. But you're right. The feelings of that guilt feeling like, because people are going to ask you, when someone asks you, oh, so where do you live? What do you do? You know,
Yeah,
how did you hear about this trip? There are no good answers that are going to feel good to someone like you and I, right?
yeah. It feels like lying.
Yeah, it's just, and because I worked in the travel business as well for quite a while. And one of my jobs would be to go scout locations, look for new locations, all international stuff. So quite often I would just show up as by myself at some fishing lodge. It was more of a fly fishing company, but I'd show up at some fishing lodge or resort, and I would think to myself, I'm just going to go in there. Nobody's going to know who I am. Maybe the owner of the place knows I'm there because they set it up or whatever. But specifically with the other guests, I just didn't want to be, because it was fly fishing and Orvis was a big company. I didn't want to, I'm the guy from Orvis. And there's a few reasons that I didn't want all them to know that. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than oftentimes I would show up. I'm like, I'm just here to go fishing. So I'd say, yeah, I'm from Montana and I like to fly fish. And then it didn't take long before I was like, yeah, okay, I work at Orvis. I run the travel business for Orvis. It's my job to scout fly fishing lodges and destinations. And then of course it's like, oh my gosh, that's the most amazing job ever. And then you
Mhm.
felt like you were on stage the whole time.
Yes, yes,
It's like, it makes it hard to also experience a lodge authentically when the people at the lodge are, trying to either impress you or this or that. It was just an interesting thing that I can relate to. And then also because Orvis was a large company, it was automatically, I have a pair of Orvis waders that I bought just a couple of years ago and they're already leaking. Can you help me get them? Like, I don't have anything to do with that part
yeah,
of the business. But anyway,
yeah. The scouting of tours is definitely an experience.
yeah.
But I agree with you. Like sometimes it's good for them to know who you are, and sometimes you don't want them to know anything about you because you want to really experience how they treat all their guests.
Right. Because you do that all the time. I think last time we spoke, I think you had just gone somewhere. You were in South America or were heading there or
Mm-hmm.
something. And you do a lot of this fam trip stuff. You go check out places and somebody knows who you are when you get there, presumably because it can be cost prohibitive to go check things out if you're paying for them the whole time. So yeah. Hmm. Do you when you go visit places, do you feel obligated? Do you generally provide them with a lot of feedback? Because that's one things I had to do is if I went to a fishing lodge to check it out to see if they were qualified to work with Orvis or whatever, I'd have to do a whole report. I couldn't just say, okay, thanks for showing me around. I don't think it's the right fit. I had to like go through the whole process and explain to them why we made the decision, yes or no. Do you do that?
I mean, I think that when you engage in a fam trip, it's sort of like an unspoken rule that you give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you love it and want to move forward or you hate it and don't want to move forward, I feel like there is kind of an unspoken commitment that you say why either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to have a lot of opinions, so I give them anyway. Yeah, I think.
Is that hard? Is that you said you've got opinions, you give them anyway, but I remember there's some places like people were so nice. Like maybe the managers were just this nice, sweet couple. They were amazing, but there was other things maybe outside. Maybe they were right across the street from a landfill, whatever. There were just certain things. It wasn't their fault. And
Yeah,
I
it
don't know.
depends. It depends, I think, who you're talking to. If you're talking to the owner of that hotel, and maybe, for me at least, I would probably still give honest feedback, but maybe like tailor it with solutions to if it's
Mm-hmm.
across from a landfill and it smells bad, maybe give potential solutions. Like how would I
Yeah.
feel more comfortable in that situation?
Right.
For me, it's usually, we partner with people and sometimes very small teams in other countries. So usually I'm not speaking directly to the hotel unless I'm at the hotel and they ask me to my face.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a little easier that way, but yeah.
It is actually, because then you can say to the DMC or the partner that you're working with, "Hey, thanks for setting up this fam trip. I stayed at 7 different places, and these are the 3 that I think would be the best fit, and here's why, and the other 4 this and that," and just provide some feedback to them, and then let them deliver the bad news, I guess. So
I
anyway,
feel like it's the hardest, right? When it's like a really good experience, but it's not for you. Like it's not a fit or it's not there yet. I experienced a lot of that in my last fam trip, and it's hard to say no when they didn't really do anything wrong. It wasn't a bad
yeah,
service. It was just like, oh, not for us.
just doesn't feel quite right, and it's hard to put your finger on that. And then of course, sometimes operators, they really, hopefully, they care about what they're doing, and it can be very like, okay, fine. What did we do wrong? And you didn't do anything. Well, no, we must have done something because otherwise, why aren't you bringing a group next year? And it can be a tough thing. But anyway, I don't know how we ended up going down that path. Um, Amanda, we've gone down a bunch of paths. Fascinating conversation. I resonate with your story so much, and I trust that the listeners will as well. And anybody that's listening to this that feels a connection, obviously the link to our website's right there in the show notes. And presumably, if they go to the website, they can figure out how to access the community, whether is it still on Facebook, the community?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I suspect so. So, um, what did I forget to ask you? What do you wish I would have asked you? And what do you want to make sure our listeners know about you, the Solo Female Traveler Network? It's also known as Sophie, right? Because
Yes.
we want to make sure
For
I
short.
want to make sure we got that out. So what else do you want to share before we wrap up?
I mean, I guess the last thing I might share is that I, a big thing that I've learned from leading all these tours and creating this community is that at the end of the day, in you can find any adventure in the world that you want, and you can go solo, you can go with a group, you can go with my group, you can go to the different group, you can go with your boyfriend, and it doesn't matter. There's a million ways to access the world. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing, the thing that I received from my work that I never expected, was a really strong bond and connection with women like me. And I grew up in a place, as we've discussed, where travel and adventure was always very laced with safety concerns and budget concerns. And those things are only their concerns, but they're only as big as you want them to be. Through this work, I've discovered that there are so many ways to see the world. But at the end of the day, it's really the people that I've met. It's, in my case, the women that I've met who have, it was a particular woman who inspired me to go and start doing tours for the Solo Female Traveler Network. And I'll never forget her for that. It was women who said, I want to go to this crazy ass country and I want you to figure it out. And I did. It was, some of my best friends have become the women on my tours, and I never expected that to happen. And I want anybody listening, if you have ever questioned traveling solo, or if you are worried about making friends, don't be. You'll find your people when you just do the thing that is closest to your heart.
That is beautiful. I really have one more lingering question, but I hate to, that was just what you said was so beautiful and it sounds like you started this network after you got robbed in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you reflect back on that and say, okay, maybe getting robbed in Mexico was not the end of the world?
I'm still a little bitter about my dive gear that was stolen. And I lost all my photos from Cuba. So
Okay.
no,
But you started the community. It turned into something amazing that's now influencing other women. So the only reason I want to bring that up when I did is sometimes those things that keep us from traveling, that might keep somebody from traveling because of perceived danger in places. Sometimes it's those things that we worry about happening on a trip that if they happen, they may actually be a good thing.
I think that when the bad things happen, that you hear, in my group at least, you hear women talking about, and I talk about it all the time, how solo travel teaches you how capable you are. It doesn't teach you how capable you are because everything went perfectly according to plan all the time.
Exactly.
It's because something went weird and wrong and you figured it out. So obviously getting robbed wasn't ideal, but it's been 10 years and I'm fine. So you're going to be fine too, no matter what.
I've been traveling 4.5 years. The only issue I've had was getting robbed in Mexico. So I don't know why you and I have so many similar stories, but
That's really funny.
I'll save mine for another day. Amanda, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to come on and have this wonderful conversation. It was a lot of fun, and let's do some collaboration projects again in the future. Thank you so much.
Sounds amazing. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. All right. Thanks, Amanda. Bye-bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.